In that instance, let's give it to Guntis, the CEO and co-founder of THEO Growth, who will share how our cognitive biases and emotions impact our decisions, and importantly, what we should be doing about that. Give it a Guntis.
Hello. Hey, hi. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. We'll try today to decode, at least try to decode a small part of how cognitive biases affect our decisions. They've been there for a very long time, but now specifically we'll try to map them to startups and more specifically to customer discovery and validation use cases. So myself, I've been in startups for like 12 or 14 years. I've been part of other startups. I had my own startup which failed, and I believe that was one of the most. There are many reasons, but one of the most was because we're quite biased on who is our ideal customer and how should we focus on them, right? Instead of trying to serve everyone, the FOMO, fears of missing out. So that's my very personal trauma, let's say, even from those times. This is topic very personal to me. Then I led the Business Incubator. Then I launched the Startup Management Bachelor program and worked like for 4 years on daily basis with new entrepreneurs. And I noticed the same patterns like all the time. And it's not like a lack of knowledge. It's the way you think, the mindset. And mindset is built from different kind of biases, right, altogether. So in last year, a year before actually, when OpenAI was launched, I was like, yes, I've been practicing some specific methodology how you could mitigate those biases, at least minimize, let's say, not avoid. But then we figured out how that can be scaled and automated. So this is what we do now. We are building crafting a framework that is tackling the biases in the journey of customer discovery and validation. So regarding those decisions in general, there's always this rational. We would like to believe we are rational thinkers, right? But there's always some balance between emotions. There's some brain shortcuts and this rational part. But let's try to go through at least few. There are like more than 152 different effects and biases, but let's check just few to scratch the surface so it doesn't get too complicated. So take a look at this picture. What do you see? Probably bird, a parrot or something, right? If you take a closer look, there's a woman. Can you see? It's quite hard because your brain, that will be part of the first phenomenon. I'll specifically, when I found out there's a woman, I'd still spend like 5 minutes or something. So I thought I'll give you a hint and show you so it's easier to notice the woman there. But it's painted woman, right? What your brain did just now, it just made the first impression, like first relation to most familiar thing, and that's a bird. So that's the first stuff, and you want it to make sense out of it, right? Always you see some data or visuals, you want to make sense, and the first impression, in this case, it's bird, but it's not. So, and that was availability heuristic, the first of biases. It's just a mental shortcut, and actually the second part of this combination heuristic is the phenomenon which is a shortcut to simplify problems. It just makes it simpler, and the whole story of bias is more or less is a brain wants to make decisions fast and spend less energy, right? So that's designed to spend less energy, do its job with minimal energy expenditure. So and that helps you to avoid this cognitive overload. Every time you have to make a decision, if you would spend like a lot of time, you'll spend a lot of energy, and it doesn't make sense for the brain, the whole body. And the combination of availability heuristics is when it not just makes shortcuts, but it's in this case specifically, it gets the first thing in your mind, the most recent, the most emotional, or the most important, or the things you think the most frequently about. And it takes just small part of all of the memories. The best case, we would have to think, remember, let's say, everything and then analyze through and figure out which of all of those memories and experience I have is the most obvious for this specific decision. But it doesn't work like that. Instinctively, it just picks the most recent, the most easy to come up with. And it's quite interesting. The more examples we can think of, we believe it might happen more frequently, right? There's an example with sharks or any kind of media. If it's quite frequently you see those articles, those titles, then you have this feeling of those things happen very oftenly, even though that's like a really, really small part of what's happening. Similarly, it might be when you get to the plane. Probably if you try to remember some crash or plane crash, you might believe that there's a high chance that this plane might crash as well, even though statistically it's completely opposite, right, compared to cars or something. So this is how your brain works. It just picks the most recent, the most simple, the most familiar thing, and makes sense out of whatever you try to decide at this point. Overconfidence bias. This is a tricky one. It dance together quite good with optimism bias. It like feeds each other. When you should be very optimistic, right, and confident, but it gets a bit tricky when you're overconfident. And how it happens? This bias basically, it makes you believe you're slightly smarter, slightly more capable than you actually are. And as I said, it's built from the previous experience, right? You should be optimistic, you should be confident when you do some stuff, and somehow things happen the right way, and you're becoming even more confident, even though that might not be the best decision, it just somehow happened. And this might be related to the founders, actually, that there are quite many, I don't know, but entrepreneurs, right, they're successful, but when you ask how do they achieve, they can't even answer that question because they haven't been aware enough of specific decisions. They just did it and it just happened. But it doesn't make it guaranteed the next time they'll start another venture, they'll be successful. But they're super confident at that point because things just happen and everything's fine so far. And in combination, it's quite related, this Dunning-Kruger effect, which is quite interesting that if you're not too competent, you are quite confident. And you might see that happen, but that's because you just don't know. You can't assess how good or how competent you are. You can't see your flaws, so you think you're doing fine. Probably you can relate those who have tried ChatGPT or some other. I've met quite many people at the left peak, right? When they tried first prompts, first chats, they feel like, oh, it's natural. I'm good at it, you know. I can get a lot of stuff happening there. But when they start to get more specific, more detailed results, they start to understand they're not as good. Either the chat, either me. I'm not too good with the prompting. And then you start you become more humble. Some at that point, same as in startups, either you quit it at all, either you start, learning once more. You're like, okay, it's not so easy as I thought. I have to learn, but I understand. And there's a saying of the more I know I don't know. And this is the point when I would suggest, being careful of getting on the left top peak when you believe you're awesome, you're like natural with it. I just started it, but I'm super good at it. There's a high chance you just don't know enough. You don't know what you don't know at that point. And on the right side, when you start learning and practicing, you're starting getting better at it. But the downside of that one is that you start overestimating the other people's capabilities and competences. And you might relate to startup founders who you think they understand the problem. You think they will use the product, which should be simple, but it's not as simple as you thought. Basically, you're overestimating other people's competences, and that might be challenging for you to communicate and build the appropriate product, right? And sell in general. You start explain complex terms and so on, people can't follow. So that's another trap. So you have to be aware where you are, right? Above average effect, guys might relate a bit more, but there's a quite interesting effect that there's many surveys when an average driver believes they're slightly better than everyone else, like 80% or something, or you are slightly smarter, or you're slightly above average IQ. That's like an effect which is quite frequent in very, very many occasions. It's slightly related to the previous one. Okay, and then the next one is confirmational bias. This might be quite familiar, quite known, and when I spoke to founders, that's actually the most frequent mentioned. that they would be willing. It's a natural way you want to be right. It's a good feeling that someone confirms, yes, you're right. That's good. So you naturally, it's a bias that favors information that you already know, and it's always whenever you notice something you knew, like, yeah, I knew it already, and it feels good. Probably the good example would be in COVID or any other, when there are two different sides of some specific question and opinions. When you find, okay, social medias play additional role on that one, putting it into the bubble. When more and more people talk about the things you agree on, this is not healthy, right? You should get outside the bubble. But basically, what it does, so it just it helps. It's like sort of cherry picking selective evidence of whatever you believe, and it looks something like that. Right? So there are your beliefs, whatever you think now. There are facts and evidence, but you believe the evidence which sort of overlap with your existing beliefs, right? And this is a similar, this has been seen visual, but it's the same basically when there's something you already know. Brain, again, it's a way of saving time and saving energy, right? Why should you re-evaluate your beliefs every time there's a new argument or data or something else? It just doesn't make sense. You'll be overloaded and exhausted. And then customer discovery, it would be whenever I have an idea, I'm trying to look for someone who says, yeah, that's an awesome idea, because it just feels you good. And I had an experience with many new founders whom we prepared hypotheses, we prepared interviews, and they just either didn't go to the interviews at all, either went to few, they got sort of declined, let's say, and they felt very bad about it, so they didn't continue. And this is the opposite. You should keep doing that. Probably you've heard about the mom test. Rob Fitzpatrick, that's one of his main messages would be, don't go and look for the approvals, confirmations, right? Go and ask for things what might not work. Why not, right? Instead of yes, the worst would be you go to the first 5 customers or people and they said it's awesome. Then this would be really boosting your overconfidence further on, and probably you would just quit doing the interviews further on because everyone says it's awesome. As an example would be in our case, right? We provide a service for customer discovery. It's quite important how you ask the question. So if I would ask, okay, I won't be waiting for an answer, but I assume that quite many still are looking for the ideal customer, or the ideal customer, it develops, so new country, new offerings. So you are in process in one or another way in customer development. So that's a problem. It's time consuming, it's like quite complex and so on. So if I would ask question, do you have that problem? In an interview, probably the other side would say, yes, we have that problem. The next question would be, the wrong question would be, would you like it to be solved? So someone told you who is your ideal customer. That's again sort of a question where it's a tendency to get the answer you want, but it's the wrong one, right? You should not. Of course, if that's a problem, of course they would like to solve it. But instead, you should keep asking on, do you solve it already? How satisfied you are with your solving? If there's a problem and they're solving it good enough already, there's a high chance they won't need your product, right? Because it's just slightly better. It's no point to change too much of a habits and everything else, processes. So ask the right questions. The next one would be, for example, one more would be, if there would be another solution to implement, start using, if there are any technical, financial, or any other decision-making blockers possible. And not only answer those questions, if there are no blockers, there's a huge problem, and they're not too satisfied with existing solution, only that whole combination of things might lead to the answer, those might be a good customers. Instead of asking, do you have the problem, do you want to have a solution? Yes, and that would be quite not good for my sort of assumption of if they need my solution, right? It doesn't mean that they need a solution. They need a solution in general. And if we go to availability heuristics, one of the good examples would be when founders chase shiny objects. Whenever there's, conference or larger company comes and say, hey, I want to work with you. Either it's a new technology. It's kind of for a while seems super important. And you see, this is a deal breaker, We have to chase this new opportunity. And then this is, as I said, it just tends, it's like the most recent, the most important, and that's why in your decision making, it feels like really, really important. It's the first thing that comes in your mind, but the time goes past, and then you figure out, okay, actually the thing wasn't as important, and you go back to the previous agenda. Just don't spend too much time on those new things, new trendy things. Instead, I would probably suggest talking to the person who is more familiar with the new topic, and they might, calm you down. Yeah, the GPT is not as awesome as you think, right? You have to learn. It's quite hard. It's time-consuming, and so on, so on. You can't achieve everything. The next one would be overconfidence. Here again, just be aware of whatever happened. Might be just coincidence, right? And be humble. Check the Kruger where you stand, and learn more. And just, you have to be confident and optimistic, right? But just be careful of not being too overconfident. And yesterday, who was looking at the BlackBerry movie, right? Those guys were overconfident at that point because they said, yeah, we've been doing this for years. We own 45% of the market share. Why should we change anything, right? It's slightly different when you build a new product, but still, it's don't stick to one specific. So you should reassess all the time whatever you believe and all your decisions out. One more, you should be quite critical about your previous decisions. You should admit if it was bad as a decision, admit it. Don't put it like in pink glasses, right? And because that one again will make a misleading assumption of how good you are with the decisions previously. And confirmation, as discussed previously, and I gave an example already, just ask for those questions but might not be as awesome you would like to hear. Don't be tended like don't try to force to get from your customer the answers you want. Ask, and if they say it's not interesting, just sit and figure out why it's not interesting. Try to segment those customers. Some say probably it's not interesting. Some say it's cool. So figure out which is, don't generalize all of those. Yeah. Three said awesome, so probably all of them think the same. They just didn't understand me in that specific meeting or something. Not to won't stay here for too long, but basically the common cause is that's a combination of limits in mind, attention in general. You have to be fast, right? You don't have to spend too much time. Shortcuts, basically saving energy. Your individual motivations, what you want to achieve. Social pressure, this is quite important. If ancestors just had to make a quite quick decision to survive, attack, fight, or flight or something, nowadays probably investors and society, right? Move, go fast. Help them to figure out, calm down, and make better decisions. And emotions. So again, if you're more tired, there's a high chance you'll make a worse decision because the brain is saving energy even more at that point, right? Even faster, you have to make a decision. You don't have any spare energy. So be careful of that one as well. And the last one is, this is one more cool visual illusion of how your brain tries to make sense. You probably, many of you know, but in this context, I would like to explain that for how long time you look at it, it might not make sense, right? It just keeps sort of changing, but your brain wants to make sense. You don't feel comfortable if you don't understand what you see. The same in market research. Or investor asks you some questions, it's just you don't feel comfortable to say, I don't know. But as Pablo in the previous discussions from 500 said, that's actually something you should be doing. Admitting that I don't know, and maybe it doesn't make sense at all, because in this case, you're trying to make sense of objects that you are familiar with. Other than that, those are just lines, right? Don't try to make sense. Those are lines for now. Instead, just go on with uncertainty, and the best thing you could do is just, instead of trying to answer, is it 3 or 2 or 3 spares there, and make quick hypotheses, make quick experiments, and figure out A/B tests or something, or just move on for now. Just don't try to fill the gaps, because in worst scenario, you will fill the gaps. If you're not sure, you'll fill the gaps with assumptions, and you'll move on with the belief that that was the right decision. You won't come back to this decision anymore, but in your unconscious level, you'll believe that you already made a decision, which probably wasn't the right one. So if you're interested in any of those topics and deep dive into 150 biases, approach me and let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you.